Hey everyone, it's Jack from Cultaholic.com, and wrestling's coming up, it's coming up. Because this week, Raw was in London, England, so wrestling's coming home. 3 wrestlers on the shirt, Jules Rimet still gleaming. Makes sense? Yes. Yes, that's right, it was a very London edition of Monday Night Raw, but it was kind of lacking in the sort of stuff we often see when we come, to London. It often feels like a bit more of a Raw after Mania kind of vibe, whereas this one I think felt more like an American Raw. I don't know, see if you agree, but basically there's only one way to find out whether it was a good show or not, and that's by assigning each individual segment a lovely individual grade. So let's get right to it. This is Monday Night Raw Graded. Before we begin as well, we received a lot of tweets from people who were at the show wearing Cultaholic merchandise. That's fantastic stuff. Thank you very much to everybody. Also want to give a shout out to Dr. Benji or Dr. Benji FM, one of my personal favourite YouTubers, and a lad who saw his own merch in the crowd at Raw and is trying to use that to leverage himself a position here at Cultaholic.com. Sneaky tactics, Ben. Not sure about that, not sure about the ethics behind it, but I admire your ambition and good luck. No, but seriously, if you enjoy Football Manager content, basically, check out Dr. Benji's channel. It's really good stuff. Now on to the opening segment. We start things off with Miz TV, and his guest is a certain large canine named Roman Reigns. Miz asks Roman what we can expect from his match with Elias at Money in the Bank this weekend, and Roman says, I'm going to bring the big fight, I am the big dog, I'm going to, kick his ass and all that sort of stuff. But the crowd really love Elias. Even though he's not in the ring at this point, they love him more than they do Roman and Miz talking on the microphone. So they start singing, oh, walk with Elias. So Roman calls him a wedding singer. That'll show him. That'll get the crowd on side, mate. Miz says that he and Roman should be like in a buddy comedy because they actually get on all right now, and Roman goes, whoa, slow down there, Dr. Cowboy, because you sound like the old Miz right now, old Hollywood Miz, and I'm here to talk to the new Miz, the guy who chased Shane McMahon around with a steel chair. And I was like, good, I like that. I'm so sick of there being a heel turn or a face turn, and then everyone just forgets that the previous character existed. I like that Roman's acknowledging that Miz used to be a dick not too long ago, and he's sort of sticking to that, and he's saying, you might be the new Miz, but don't slip back into your old ways. Good continuity there on Raw. Once Roman's done talking about Elias, Miz cuts an impassioned promo on the guy he's feuding with right now, which is obviously Shane McMahon. Miz says that Shane's so entitled, he's made Miz realise that respect is something that's earned from the WWE Universe, explaining, of course, his babyface turn and everything. So that's alright, that's pretty nice stuff. But then Shane comes out to booze and says that, you know what, you're forgetting one thing. I'm your boss, and as of right now, Miz TV is cancelled. And then we come back to the ring, and then Elias runs in, and so does Bobby Lashley, and they beat up the baby faces, and then Shane sets up a tag match. So the segment was going alright, and then it just became standard Raw opening segment A, or maybe B. Because sometimes they do that whole promo chain thing where like 6 people interrupt each other, but often they do the Teddy Long thing as well. So it's 1B. Let's call it Raw opening segment 1B in effect. Tick. So this was, a difficult opening segment to grade. There was some good, there was some bad. I didn't really know what to do. Eventually, I settled on a C-, right? This sounds harsh, especially because I enjoyed the continuity of Roman going like, oh, Miz, you used to be a bad guy, now you're all right, watch what you're doing. I enjoyed that complexity, I enjoyed that continuity. But there were 3 key things, really, that I thought held back this segment from actually getting a good grade. 1, it was unoriginal. It was another one of those cookie-cutter Raw opening segments. 2, the crowd were just not vibing with it. Vibing with it? Why have I put that? I don't know who I think I am. But yeah, the crowd weren't really on the same wavelength as the writers here, I think. Basically, they wanted to see Elias come out and do a song, or something a bit more house showy, a bit more loose feeling. And I think the fact that Roman and Miz were being really cocky baby faces going, we're awesome, yeah, we are pretty cool guys, aren't we? The crowd were just like, no, we want Elias. So that didn't help the flow of the segment, really. And thirdly, Lashley, I'm getting so confused, but I don't think he's been on Shane's side yet. But either way, I'm sick of these rotating door heels. We've seen so many people be just sort of rotating door heels, henchmen for hire on the roster with little rhyme or reason. Drew's been doing it, Ziggler was doing it before he took some time away. Rusev, Nakamura, Sanity and Primo for some reason stuck up for Shane on SmackDown a few weeks ago. There needs to be a little bit more depth to the writing, I think. So that's why this opening segment only gets a C-, but we'll see if the show improved from there. So that tag match that was set up by Shane happens immediately after the opening segment. So we get Roman Reigns and The Miz versus Elias and Bobby Lashley. And it's a pretty standard Raw TV kind of tag match with the baby faces baby facing it up and the heels healing it up and sort of getting their signature offense in on each other. But it never really kicks into that higher gear. There's also a frustrating non-finish with Shane McMahon stopping a hot tag from The Miz to Roman Reigns, basically causing the DQ. So the babyfaces win, but Shane's caused the DQ. The non-finish is frustrating, but I understand why they did it, because, you know, a lot of these guys have got matches against one another on Sunday, and you don't want to see a clear-cut winner too soon. So I understand why it may have happened in this instance. But watch your back, WWE. Don't be doing too many screwy finishes, yeah? Or I'll complain on the internet about it. I'm going straight down the middle with this one. This gets a C. The match was completely fine, average, and so was the post-match beatdown as well, or attempted beatdown, where Shane, Elias, and Lashley, all three heels, tried to gang up on the Miz and Roman, but Miz and Roman valiantly fought them off. It wasn't groundbreaking stuff, it was just perfectly serviceable wrestling action, and yeah, I can't think fairer than that. So straight down the middle, C grade. Next up, it's Adam Paci's boy, Adam Paci's playboy, Mojo Rawley versus Apollo Cruz. It's bizarre seeing Mojo back on TV after so long away. I mean, apart from those backstage vignettes, but he's actually got a match now, and he's got that weird blue on his face that he's sort of drawn on himself because he's gone a bit crazy. He stares in the mirror a lot. He's kind of an introspective, self-loathing heel, but as it turns out, in the ring, he's just a heel. I don't understand how that character feeds into his in-ring persona quite yet. The match is a really short one pretty much, with Apollo Crews doing like a handspring at some point, landing a bit awkwardly on his knee and tweaking it, and Mojo Rawley taking full advantage, ruthlessly going after the knee, charging like shoulder first into the leg and sending Apollo Crews arse over tit, and then picking up the win with a big Alabama slam. I don't know what to think of it. There wasn't much to go on here. Because there wasn't much to go off, and because the crowd were pretty dead actually, but no one made any major mistakes, I'm going to give this segment a C-. I thought that Mojo tried his best to really heal it up, but at the same time the crowd were just not into it. But who knows, maybe next week we'll build on it a little bit more, and then the week after that a little bit more, and maybe we'll get this wonderful three-dimensional heel character for Mojo Rawley, and not just a guy with blue on his face who's a little bit ruthless at times when his opponent's injured. Maybe they'll do that, but I'm worried they're just going to forget about it and we won't see him for 3 months. Which one do you think's going to happen? Fill in your answers now. Oh, come on. Just give Mojo something to do. He's Adam Paci's playboy. Next up, the double contract signing, or should that be Dublin contract signing, between Becky Lynch, because she's Irish, Lacey Evans and Charlotte Flair for the Raw and SmackDown Women's Championship matches respectively. I'm really sorry. So all three women come out, Michael Cole's in the ring with the microphone, and they all cut a promo on each other. Cole doesn't get involved, he's not like, you suck, Lacey. I mean, the three competitors cut a promo on each other. Becky Lynch cuts a really good one, she's so over, of course, and basically just talks about how she's the underdog, but she's not. It's a bit of a weird one, so she goes, I know these two are bigger and stronger and more athletic than I am, but I'm Becky Lynch, I'm the double champ, I'm Becky 2 belts, and also, they're going to be feeling way more pressure. Lacey Evans can't afford to lose her first big match in the spotlight, and Charlotte Flair can't afford to lose her millionth. And I was like, oh, snap. It was a good promo, it was good. Things kind of fizzled out when the heels got on the microphone because the crowd just weren't being kind to them at all, but they both powered through all right, both Charlotte and Lacey. Not quite as impassioned as Becky Lynch's delivery, but they did okay. I mean, I'm not saying that Lacey or Charlotte are the same character as Becky, you know, especially Lacey. They've got more sort of icy demeanors, but at the same time, I do think that the segment sort of slowed down a little bit towards the end. However, it was still fine. I'm going to give it a B grade. I thought it was decent, and I enjoyed the ending with the two heels ganging up on Becky Lynch and slamming her through the contract signing table. And yeah, I don't actually know what's going to happen at the weekend. She could lose one belt, she could lose both, she could keep them both. I think she's either going to keep them both or lose one, but I don't know which one, so this is doing pretty well. Next up, Baron Corbin versus Ricochet, a match which doesn't fill you with inspiration, I guess, because we know how Baron Corbin's been booked recently, and we know how Ricochet's been booked recently as well. He doesn't quite win as often as he maybe should, coming onto the main roster with so much promise and potential. He doesn't even win this match. Basically what happens is Ricochet's trying all of his stuff, Baron Corbin's sometimes getting the better of him because of his size and strength advantage, and eventually he actually catches Ricochet during one of his flippy doos and hits the end of days. And it's quite a slick reversal and stuff, but it's not the result the crowd wanted to see, and to be honest, I don't agree with it either, and I'm not the sort of person who thinks that you can never book a heel to win over a babyface, internet darling, indie legend kind of guy. I just don't think it was the right decision, especially with the Money in the Bank ladder match coming up. And Corbin doesn't need to win clean all the time. He always wins like dirty, apart from when he beat Angle at WrestleMania, but he doesn't need to beat Ricochet clean. I really do have to question this booking decision, and that's the main reason, not so much the action in the ring, but the booking is the main reason I'm going to give this segment a D grade, I'm afraid. Sounds harsh, but yeah, it just wasn't what anyone wanted to see, really. You know what, I've just consulted my notes, and I've remembered one thing that does... I thought when I said that, a D's pretty harsh, just because I don't agree with the result. There was another major reason that this got a D grade. After the match, Baron Corbin, for no reason at all, fetches a ladder, sets it up in the ring, climbs it, there's a briefcase up there because it's the go-home show, and he goes to grab it, and Ricochet pushes him off the ladder, and he hits the top rope, and he's hurt, and Ricochet's music plays, and everyone's like, yay, can't wait for the ladder match. Why did Corbin do that? Why did he need to set up the ladder? What's the point? I hate when wrestlers behave kind of like robots or like simulations would, and I think this was a big example of that. So that's why he gets the D grade, and I'm glad that I read the next bit of my notes before I just moved on while being really harsh to an alright match. Next up, we have a Fatal 4-Way Women's match for Money in the Bank Momentum, that most precious of entities. But there was a replacement earlier on in the night. So before this match, backstage, maybe an hour or so before, we saw Alexa Bliss on her phone, and she was like freaking out because she'd lost her luggage. We've all been there. I've never been there, touch wood, because that is honestly terrifying to me. Oh, the stress. I can't even imagine. Alexa's freaking out, understandably. She wants her luggage back, but she's doing it in kind of a semi-heelish, tweenerish Alexa Bliss way. And then she meets Nikki Cross backstage, but it's not Nikki as we know her. It's a very calm, very measured Nikki Cross, which is quite unnerving, to be honest. It's quite clever, I think. Nikki does a good performance here. She basically is nice to Alexa and says, you know what, Alexa, I hope you're all right. You can't wrestle now because you've not brought your gear. I'll step in. I'll fill in for you in this Fatal 4-Way match. And Alexa's like, you know what, Nikki? You're all right, you. And I'm sorry for not getting to know you since you moved over to Monday Night Raw. And I'm like, oh, one of them is going to betray the other? Or are they just going to become a sick tag team? I like all of those possibilities. So yeah, this was a good build-up to this match, but was the match itself any good? So this was Nikki filling in for Alexa versus Dana versus Natalya versus Dana Brooke. How could I forget Dana, because she had the best spot of the match. She did a huge crossbody off a ladder on the outside onto all three other women. And the crowd were like appreciative of that. I was like, all right, Dana, go on. The match itself, yeah, it was pretty good. Moved along at a pretty good pace. I'm just surprised because we haven't seen the women's division get much time in the past few weeks since WrestleMania, but this made up for it. This was a high octane match, and Nikki Cross picked up the victory. The right decision, I think, given what happened before the match. And I'm going to give it a B+. Nikki pinned Natalya, by the way. B+, a lot of positives to take away from this. I enjoyed the backstage stuff beforehand. I enjoyed the action itself. I enjoyed Dana's big crossbody. I enjoyed Alexa on commentary. And I enjoyed the aftermath too. Yes, it featured another wrestler wanting to climb the ladder and symbolically remove the briefcase. But this one served a purpose. It wasn't just Corbin doing it because he felt like it. It was Alexa doing it with Nikki helping her. She set up the ladder for her, held it steady. And I'm thinking, is there going to be some sort of betrayal or even just an assist on Sunday? It adds another intriguing little dimension into the match, and I like it quite a lot. So this whole thing, pre-match, match itself, and post-match, all together does get a B+. One of the high points of the show for me. So, Rey Mysterio and Cesaro have a singles match on Raw, and predictably, it's one of the best matches on the show. It is probably the match of the night. I mean, it's Rey Mysterio and Cesaro. But the whole story surrounding this was a little bit more intriguing, with Cesaro bumping into Rey and Dominic backstage and suggesting that Dominic actually looks more like Samoa Joe than he does Rey Mysterio, which, if you don't understand, implies that Samoa Joe and Dominic's mother once kissed and then 9 months later tiptoed out into the nearest forest, looked under the tallest tree and found a newborn baby. That's how pregnancy works, don't tell me otherwise. Anyway, yes, this was the best match on the show, probably. This or the women's Fatal 4-Way, that pushed it close, but Cesaro versus Rey, they're two excellent wrestlers. There were a lot of cool moments, such as Cesaro going for his 619, but Rey ducking it and reversing it because he knows the move. There was a really cool Code Red spot at one point, and Rey eventually did pick up the victory with his own 619 and the West Coast, but not the West Coast Pop. Whoa, what have I done there? It's not 2005 or earlier. Not the West Coast Pop, just the splash, or was it a frog splash? The move that he does now, not the West Coast Pop. God, that's really rattled me to my core, that. Yep, B+, this was a good match. I enjoyed it quite a lot. Usually, I'd have liked to have seen Cesaro get the win, but in this instance, I can totally understand why he didn't. Basically, I think that Rey's got a little bit more going on now storyline-wise, and he needs the momentum heading into Money in the Bank. So I guess Cesaro's push can be delayed for a little few weeks, can't it? Cesaro is getting a push, right? Right? Lads? Next up, the Firefly Fun House with Bray Wyatt, and oh no, make sure you're sat down when I say this, because this is going to shock you to your very core. It was an evil kids TV show all along. Who would have thought it? Oh no! Yes, Bray reveals his secret this week, which basically involves transforming into a masked evil kind of psycho clown looking thing while the music goes all warped and the visual effects go all warped as well. It was interesting. It was more classic horror-based Bray Wyatt stuff, but it's encouraging because I think it was just different enough from his whole follow the buzzards cult leader thing, and it's a bit more overtly sinister than that even, and I think that's what he needs right now. He needs more of a hard reset, and if it becomes more of like a split gimmick where half the time he's this nice kids presenter and then he warps into this demonic nightmarish sort of masked figure, that's really cool. I like that a lot. He looks a bit like sort of early Slipknot era mask kind of thing going on if you haven't seen it. I push my fingers. That's Ross's thing. Can't do that. This gets a B+. I'm optimistic. I was just saying last week or the week before that they need to do something with Bray soon. Otherwise, it's just going to turn into an endless string of vignettes or like an Emelina sort of thing where it just never happens. But it looks like they're pulling the trigger with it. So I'm invested. I'm good to go. Come on, Bray. Let's see what you can do. And finally, the main event. Sami Zayn versus Braun Strowman with Strowman's Money in the Bank ladder match spot on the line. As Falls Count Anywhere as well. Quite a mouthful, to be honest. So earlier, Sami complained to Shane McMahon backstage about Braun Strowman throwing him in a dumpster, man. I love the word dumpster. Is there a more American word than that? Sami's not even American, he's Canadian. And then Shane was like, you know what, I agree. That was unfair, Sami, because you're a heel like I am, so I'm going to put you in a match with Braun Strowman with his, spot in the Money in the Bank ladder match on the line. And Sami's like, that's cool. Strowman's there as well, and doesn't really kick off as much as I think he should. He should be trashing stuff, breaking Shane's desk apart in his hands and that, but he doesn't do any of that. He just accepts it, and we have this match as the main event. And the match is fun but messy, and at times actually feels like a little bit of a cop-out for the main event of Raw, but I know I enjoy like a good backstage brawl as much as anyone. It was kind of one of those semi-backstage brawls where they meander into the back a bit, but then back out onto the stage. They'll go through a few corridors, but they never venture too far outside of the main confines of the arena. It was okay. It mainly consisted of Sami running away from Strowman and getting thrown into things, but then McIntyre and Corbin. I'm mixing up all the renter heels together. McIntyre and Corbin got involved and basically helped Sami Zayn get the victory over Braun Strowman. In fact, the final image was of those three piling on Strowman on the ramp to stop him from kicking out. Yeah, a lot to unpack here, really. And it's going to be one of those wishy-washy grades because there's pros and cons. I was going to give this a grade within the C bracket of grades, but instead I'm going to bump it up to a B-, and you may disagree because obviously it wasn't a match, it was just more of an elongated segment. But at the same time, I enjoyed the logic behind it. And it was kind of an unspoken logic, or a semi-unspoken logic, with Corbin and McIntyre recognizing the threat of Braun Strowman in the Money in the Bank ladder match and trying to stop him from getting the win because they view Zayn as less of a threat. It's just Sami Zayn. I think that could pay off really well on Sunday if Zayn shocks them. Maybe not even by getting the win, but by just hitting some big moves, building up a head of steam, and they're like, oh, we've remembered that this guy's dangerous too. Whether or not that happens, I enjoyed the logic here. The commentary did mention it, but they didn't mention, I don't think, unless I missed it, that Strowman won last year as well. So he's got the experience of winning Money in the Bank as well. I just really liked that little touch, and it really did elevate the segment in my eyes. At the same time, it wasn't a perfect match to end the show or anything, and it was kind of a non-wrestling match to end a show full of non-wrestling things. This did feel like a bit of an angle-heavy show, but I'm going to give this match a B-. I thought it served a purpose, and I'm pretty pleased actually that Sami Zayn's in the Money in the Bank ladder match too, rather than Strowman, who of course won it last year. So now on to the overall grade for Raw in London. Way useless. So I've done the opposite of what I did for the previous segment. For that last match on the show, I was going to give it a C+ or something, but I bumped it up to a B-. For the overall grade, I was going to give it like a B-, but I've knocked it down to a C+, and I'll explain why. Well, first and foremost, it was better than last week, that's for sure. You couldn't really get a lot worse than Raw last week. So it was an improvement, and they're moving in the right direction heading into the pay-per-view, so that's pretty good. It started off kind of in lackluster fashion, took a while to get going, but it did pick up with the women's four-way match and Cesaro versus Rey as well. But generally, on the whole, I felt like the whole show was a bit of a slog to get through because it kept being broken up by a lot of backstage segments, promo segments, video packages, talking segments. Didn't really feel, and it sounds stupid to say for a 3-hour show, but it didn't really feel like the fans maybe got their full money's worth in terms of actual wrestling in front of them, just because there was so much extra stuff going on. And I know that's all part of a wrestling show. Wrestling isn't necessarily just about wrestling, but it just felt like the balance was a little bit off this week. Let me know if you agree in the comments down below, because I think that's a bit of an interesting point. I'd like to see what other people think of that too. But yes, thank you very much for watching. It will be Money in the Bank this weekend, and of course we'll be doing SmackDown Graded tomorrow, so catch you in a bit. Thanks very much for watching, and let us know what you think in the comments section down below. You can follow Cultaholic on Twitter at Cultaholic and on Facebook at facebook.com/Cultaholic. If you enjoy what we do, then please do check out our Patreon, patreon.com/Cultaholic, where you can pledge. And don't forget, of course, most importantly of all, to hit subscribe and to join us.